Broadcasting Black Death. The deaths of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile have played for thousands and thousands of hours on social media feeds. Viral videos of their final moments captured on cell phones.
Their deaths came at the hands of police officers, broadcast for the world to see. Today we'll discuss the trauma and toll of police brutality on African American communities.
Welcome to the stream. I'm Malika Bilal.
I'm Ahmed Shahabuddin.
It's been a tumultuous week in the United States. Alton Sterling, a 37-year-old black man, was shot by police outside a convenience store in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he was selling CDs. He was the father of 5. His death will be investigated by the Department of Justice. Philando Castile was fatally shot by police at a traffic stop for a broken tail light in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. His girlfriend began streaming the encounter with the officer shortly after the shots were fired. He was in possession of a weapon and, according to his girlfriend, had disclosed that he had a license for his gun. Their deaths have sparked widespread protests by thousands across the United States.
And many of those protesting took to the streets after viewing the videos of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and so many more before them. The stream was at one of those protests last week here in Washington, D.C., and digital producer Dan Ming spoke to some of those attending.
As a black woman, I'm sick and tired of seeing my people being slain in the streets for something they had no control over, for being killed for no reason, and it's disheartening. I watched these videos and I cried for somebody I didn't even know. I am heartbroken, angry, and it's time for us to make a change, honestly.
That's 2 people losing their lives. They're dying. They have families that love them. I don't want to see anyone die, but I don't want to see any of my black people die at the hands of the police. I just don't want to see it. I know enough about what happens in this country to know what happens.
And that other videos of people being tortured are like kept from the public, but these videos, it's like, oh, it's for everybody's entertainment. Let's put it out there so everybody can get a statement. Oh, let's put it out there. But it's just too much. To me, it's almost as if watching a lynching. Like, I can't take it. I've never been able to take it.
Joining us on set today, Damon Young is the editor-in-chief of the website Very Smart Brothers. Sean King is the senior justice writer for the New York Daily News.
Evelyn Gogi, a.k.a. Evelyn from the Internets, is a vlogger, and Terrell J. Starr is the national political correspondent at Fusion. Thank you all for being here. Damon, I want to start by asking you the question that a lot of people have been asking each other. Should we watch these videos? Is it right to watch these videos? We asked our community, and one person, Ishki, tweeted in saying, no, Black Death is already a form of entertainment for racists. I already know what happened, not adding to their pain by viewing. What do you think? Did you watch them?
I did not watch Alton Sterling, and I actually spent an entire day trying to avoid watching that, avoiding watching the press conference. And there was also another, I guess, view of the video of the death that surfaced on the internet that day, and I didn't watch that. And I wrote about not watching that. And then, right as I'm going to bed, I'm on Instagram, and I happen to come across a footage of Castile, of his death. And an even more graphic, even more violent depiction, even more heart-wrenching because, his girlfriend and his girlfriend's daughter are with him. And so I went an entire day trying to avoid doing that, only to just come across it right before bed.
And something more gruesome.
And something more gruesome. And it just, it's an example of how these things are unavoidable. Mm-hmm. And, I used to assign a value judgment just in terms of how we should process this and assess this. I even wrote something last year about how I believe that people should watch these. Even if it was difficult, even if it was heart-wrenching, you need to force yourself to watch it. But my belief about that has changed a bit. I think that practicing a bit of self-care is also important. Mm-hmm. And acknowledging the trauma and processing it and dealing with it is also important. So if you're a person who feels like you've watched enough of these mm-hmm. and you just don't have it in you to watch, I don't begrudge you at all. Because mm-hmm. again, right now to me, it just comes down to your own personal feelings about it and whether or not you can handle watching it. Because again, perhaps, you realize that if you watch it, mm-hmm. you might not be able to go to work that next day and deal with, you know,
Gosh,
let's say you work in a corporate.
I love that you said that. I, unfortunately, and probably always will remember where I was when I saw the news of Alton Sterling. Actually, Sean, you are involved in that. So here, take a look at my laptop here. This is what I tweeted when I saw it. One of the lines that you wrote in your piece: "Don't try to make sense of police killing of Alton Sterling." How are we supposed to see what police did to Alton Sterling and then watch Sports Center or crack jokes? And I mention that because I happened to be on vacation, but I was happy because I knew I did not have to go to work, because I didn't know how I would process this, dealing with this, and then having to go to the office the next day. I know you were in a grocery store with your children when people were pinging you to let you know this had happened. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I was so we're moving from Atlanta to Brooklyn, and I'm taking the obligatory IKEA furniture trip, and so many people had seen it and were so disturbed by what they saw. Alton Sterling, this man pinned to the ground in front of a convenience store in Louisiana, has a gun pressed to his chest and is shot repeatedly in his chest and in his back, and he had no gun or weapon in his hand. And so I'm at IKEA with my wife with 5 kids, and I keep getting these text messages and Facebook messages, and at that point I assumed that something terrible had happened. So I kind of steal off to a corner and see it, and just like those of you who did see it, I was instantly furious and angry and disturbed, and I'm conflicted because I agree with every single word that Damon said. I mean, to the letter. But at the same time, I know that over 600 people have been killed by police this year, and we know Alton Sterling's name and almost none of the others because this horrible video that we should not have to watch, that we should not have to watch it because it should not exist. But because it did exist, there's a small possibility of justice, and now people are protesting and people know his name. But otherwise, I think he would be as anonymous as the other 599 people who've been killed by police this year. So I'm extremely conflicted, and I like what Damon acknowledged in that my thoughts on how we share these and how we view these is fluid and changing as well. And I don't think we fully have our mind wrapped around the psychological impact. And I think particularly of my kids, who my 2 oldest daughters are teenagers, and like you, they tried to avoid it, and it was forced on them. And it's painful, and I feel for his family, knowing that it's out there. But at the same time, I hope that it makes justice at least a little more likely because it is out there.
Terrell?
Yes, one of the main problems with this is that with the media distribution of these videos is that I find that there's an extreme disregard for the mental health element of it. There's also not many options about how people can choose not to consume these videos. For example, if we were to embed the video in an article, for example, that gives the person an option of whether or not how much they want to scroll down or up to consume it, there is no option on the video where you can go through an additional point where you could say, well, I choose to consume this, or I choose not to consume
a trigger warning, really, of sorts.
Yeah, trigger warning. So not only just in words, but just built in the interface of the video. So I think that's the issue. And what also makes people angry is that there seems to be a disregard of how we as Black people feel. And you talk about the issue of mental health. When I saw the Alton Sterling video, I was in the middle of writing a story about Samaria Rice, who is the mother of Tamir Rice, and writing about her.
And Tamir Rice, for our international audience, the child who was killed in Ohio holding a toy gun.
Yes, absolutely. And when I saw the video, I didn't have any intention of watching it. It was just on my timeline. And I don't know how I pushed the button, but I did. When I saw the video, it triggered something in me back 2 years ago. I'm somebody who lived with depression, and I went through 2 years of therapy, and my issue was suicidal ideation. When I saw that video, it triggered feelings I had from my suicidal thoughts 2 years ago. So it hit me very personally, and fortunately I had the option of getting medical treatment, and I still go to a psychiatrist every month, and I take medication to deal with anxiety, but I know a lot of people don't have that luxury.
Right.
And so when we talk about the mental health component of it, we have to remember that in America, our state governors, our local municipalities don't value it. So if you think about the case of Chicago, for example, in 2011, when Mayor Rahm Emanuel cut 6 clinics from the city of Chicago down to about, it was a 12, but now it's 6 clinics. And so these clinics were in some of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago.
Areas that need. I like that you mentioned that, because of course that is my hometown, and so I've seen the effects firsthand of that. Ahmed.
Yeah, and it's just, as you were talking, I couldn't help but think, even though you said you didn't expect or plan to see these videos, whether you see them or not, it takes the emotional toll. And Evelyn, I wanted to ask you, Rignum wrote to us and said, of course, without these videos, we would never hear about these executions. Think about how many times it's happened before these videos. We have another tweet that says, but in legal terms, evidence is key, yet somehow in the US, some evidence doesn't seem to count. Evelyn, I know you generally try to avoid these videos when police brutality ends in killings. Does it still take a toll on you, and why do you make that decision?
Like Damon was saying earlier, it is a personal decision, and whenever I see something down my feed and I know it will result in the loss of a human life, I decide to opt out, log off, X out, and don't watch it. It still takes a toll on me because you can't avoid the thumbnails and the freeze frames and the things that are used as headers for articles. So the imagery is still there. So while it might not be in motion, the imagery is definitely still there. And then you begin to think about, what if it was me? And for me, when I made my Call in Black video, that was last year, around this time, which is 1 year since Sandra Bland was found hanging in a jail cell. And so you start to put yourself in that situation. What would I have done? What if this is me? What if this was my brother? I have a 20-year-old brother. And so that definitely puts you in a bad place. So even if you don't watch things, you still feel the effects.
Evelyn mentioned 2 things there that I want to share with our audience. One, here's a picture of Sandra Bland, and this week does mark the anniversary of her death after being pulled over in a traffic stop. The protests for her and other women who have also been killed, because it's not just black men, under hashtag Say Her Name, so check out that hashtag. But what Evelyn mentioned was a video that went viral of sorts, Call in Black. Have a little look at that.
Specifics might differ. Swap a grown man with a teenage girl in a bathing suit, switch the Skittles for loud music, or not using your turning signal, or praying in a church, or walking. Every reblog, retweet, repost of citizen video footage that ultimately will never see the light of a courtroom. Every Vine you watch of someone you know from Twitter getting pepper sprayed, and every link to a racist GoFundMe page. Sure, the specifics might differ, but watching the same narrative play out over and over and over and over and over and over again takes a toll. Sometimes I need a minute, okay? And that's where Calling in Black would be so clutch. Oh no, it's not contagious. I need a solid day to reaffirm my humanity to myself, so see you tomorrow. Oh.
One of the I guess interesting things about this. Okay, so we have this dynamic with how we interact with each other because of social media, because of the internet, where it's almost like this split consciousness where we could have 5 or 6 different conversations going on at the same time. Right. Like you could be on GChat and have 3 conversations going on there, on Facebook Messenger, on text, maybe even on the phone. And each topic, like one topic could be about burritos, the next one could be about J.R. Smith putting on a shirt or something, just some random differences in tone and differences in content. So Friday, there was a point where I had 7 different conversations going on.
Online, these are people online, okay.
Yeah, 3 on GChat, 3 on Facebook Messenger, and 1 through text. Each of the conversations were about this. And not just about this, but about a very specific distillation of it where we're all just talking about how we're processing it. We're not even talking about like the macro, larger police brutality issues. Now we're not even getting into that. It was all just about like one person's talking about how they wanted to go home that weekend and just spend time with their mom and their sister because they just didn't feel like going through that weekend alone and dealing with that. Another person was talking about just trying not to watch the videos. Another person was talking about being in a corporate space surrounded by white people and not necessarily knowing how to, or not wanting to go to work, not knowing how to interact with his coworkers. And so, and again, so you had, it's this very hyper concentrated, reaction.
Pockets, really.
Pockets, yeah, and we're all, and it feels like with this week, more than the other weeks when these shootings have occurred, where the conversation this has been a huge part of the conversation, the whole self-care aspect, the whole processing it aspect.
Maybe because it's been so relentless.
Yes, and it is a collective trauma, and just trying to make sense of it.
What were you going to say, Evelyn?
I said also the graphic nature of it.
Yeah.
Particularly more graphic than other things.
It's interesting that you say that. We got a comment here on Facebook Live that I just saw. And someone says, this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened before. And so she mentions maybe, just maybe, Sean, something will change after this one.
Well, that's hopeful. And I refuse to give up that small inkling of hope. Like most people who know me, think of me as like an endless optimist. And there is a part of me that feels like we're stuck here on this issue, that police brutality is going to, because right now, 2016 in America is on pace to be the deadliest year for police brutality ever measured. Worse than last year, worse than 2014. So the problem's not getting better, it's getting worse. The needle is moving in a direction that none of us really ever thought it would. But there's still a part of me that refuses to accept that this will always be our normal. I know that in this country and all around the world throughout history, my bachelor's and master's is in history, societies have sometimes been in positions, not like think of institutional slavery, or in deep, deep depressions, or in wars that ravaged their countries, and they were able to pivot and move away from those systems. It was always hard. It always took a very long time. And I think of it like this. Even the modern day civil rights movement in America took place from 1954 to 1968. It's kind of the years most people think of it as. Well, that's 14 years. And if we are in a version of that now, this Black Lives Matter movement, we really are only 2 years in to our 14-year struggle against this.
Wow.
And,
look at Evelyn's face there. Her eyes went big. Damon laughed.
I'm not ready.
2 years in.
I don't say that to discourage you. I say it to say that there may not be hope tomorrow, that it may not change tomorrow, but part of the struggle and part of our struggle in fighting this issue is it has been hard to build substantive, long-term, lasting solutions because we are in a state of emergency every single week, facing a new injustice, new brutality, a new narrative. It's as if your house catches on fire and you realize that there were fire codes that were violated in the process. Well, when your house is on fire, you're not worried about changing the code. You're not worried, does the fire department have the right certification or the right water pressure? You're just, your house is on fire. And so here we are, 2016, facing extreme, unthinkable brutality. But I think if we could begin to understand that solutions may take time, but they're possible, we can get there together.
And on that note, Sean, you bring up framing and perspective, because to you, obviously, this is a relentless problem. We heard in the video, people talking about this feeling as though it's a narrative that's a pattern that's just not going away. So obviously, framing matters. The reason I bring that up is we have this interesting tweet from Julie saying, my thought is that anyone still wondering if we have a problem is part of the problem. Now, that might seem obvious, but at the same time, there are many people who think there is no real problem when it comes to police brutality, or specifically with the black community. And I'm just curious, Terrell, when you see tweets like this, and when you're in the moment and you're still coping with this, and you're trying to maybe take care of yourself, also deal with this as a professional, as a on a personal level, what do you make of these kinds of divisions where people don't even want to address this as a problem?
It's not unusual. It's the same thing that's happened throughout time, right? So back during slavery, people didn't think slavery was a problem. During the 60s, people didn't think Jim Crow was a problem. There's always going to be someone who feels that our plight is not an issue. So personally, how I've dealt with it, I'm very fortunate to work at a company that really values diversity, and we're a social justice centered news organization. I think that's something that's pretty rare with most people. So I don't have the conversations of, man, I don't want to go to work today because I'm afraid of what my white co-workers are going to say. I'm fortunate enough to not have to deal with that.
Oh my gosh, I was just telling someone that yesterday, that I love where I work because my coworkers in slang are all really woke. And so I do not have to deal with that at work. So I get that.
That's the whole thing. And I think how you deal with these certain people who say that this is not an issue, I tend to ignore them, because everybody is not going to get on the boat to revolution together. We're all not going to get there together. We're not going to get on there through the same roads. And I actually took a few days off social media just to decompress, because dealing with these people, I think that just because someone has a problem, it's not my problem. These people have a racial illness, a racist illness, and people try to force it on me. It's not something for me to consume. And I advise anyone who I speak to not consume people's hate and their distrust of our stories and try to discount who we are. And I even do that as a writer. I do that as someone who's active on social media. And again, I'm very fortunate enough to where I'm at a place where I could take those kinds of stands. So I encourage people in their own ways.
Terrell, you mentioned you do that as a writer. I want to share something with our audience from someone who does this as a comedian. She wants to talk about what justice looks like to her. This is Lorraine. Have a listen to what she told the stream.
People ask, like, to you, what does justice look like? And I mean, as far as the justice system goes, I can't really say. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think that justice for everyone means freedom for everyone to feel safe, freedom for everyone to feel comforted, no fear. As Nina Simone says, freedom means no fear. So no more flinching when you walk by a cop car, no more flinching when you think of police, just feeling safe and feeling cared for in your community. That's what I think freedom is. That's what I think justice is.
You say that, and it sounds aspirational, it sounds right, but Terrell, just quickly, do you feel like you're marked for death? Do you feel that fear on a daily basis that she was alluding to?
I do, and I'm always thinking about that, and that's the reason why tomorrow I'm going to see my psychiatrist and have a conversation about it. I wasn't in this mood, I would say, for a good year, or more than a good year. So when you ask me, do I feel like I'm marked for death? Yes, absolutely. And I do agree with what the sister said. But right now, I know my emotional capacity, and I know I need help to decompress. So I'm very fortunate to have access to mental health services. And if you do feel that way, I encourage people to find someone to decompress and talk about it as well. But yes, I do feel that way.
Damon?
I don't feel that way. I don't feel necessarily like a really present fear, but what I do feel is a recognition that a wrong decision, a wrong, maybe I've, forgot to, change my registration sticker. Maybe I left my wallet in my, or I left my driver's license out of my wallet and I just don't happen to have it with me. Or maybe I don't do any of those things.
Or you didn't signal.
Yeah, maybe I didn't signal. Or,
you looked
and again,
at
maybe I did everything
the wrong
perfectly.
way. I'm going to pause you there, Damon. I want to also hear from our other two guests in the post show. There's so much to talk about. We're taking Damon, Sean, Evelyn, and Terrell with us to the post show.
That's at stream.aljazeera.com. See you there.
But first, we'll leave you with R&B singer Janelle Monáe's protest song released in 2015, naming Black Americans killed by police and vigilantes.
Say his name, Walter Scott. Say his name, Walter Scott. Won't you say his name? Jermaine Reed. Say his name, Jermaine Reed.
Welcome back to the Post Show. We're taking a look at the impact and emotional toll of police brutality on the African American community. We're going to pick back up on that conversation with something on my laptop. This is a photo. It's just haunting. It's a painting that someone then posted on Facebook. It's a painting called The Talk. You can see the artist there, Michael D'Antuono. This painting is unfortunately even more relevant today than ever. This is what someone posted in their post, Erica Danger, on July 7th. And it is two African-American parents talking to their young son, and in the background you can see no indictment and police shooting of unarmed youth. And so of course you can swap out what's on that television for any of the other number of cases. I see you nodding there, Evelyn. Is this a conversation that you're having with your friends? I know you don't have children, but is this something that you think about when you do eventually?
It is, because, and to kind of almost decenter myself a little bit, I'm first generation American, so a lot of the historical context isn't part of my particular family history and heritage, but I do try to use my platform to bring that to the light. And so it's interesting to think that my parents, who are not from the United States, have learned over the decades that they need to sit my brother down, who is now 20 years old and 6'3". And it started when he was maybe 7. You know, when you go out, you know, we live in the suburbs of Fort Worth, Texas. Whenever you go out, don't run, just talk, just be nice, you know, don't put your hands in your pockets. And the fact that they had to learn to also have these conversations, no words. Like, I can't imagine being in their position.
You know, one thing I wanted to bring up, and this is kind of a free-for-all, but Terrell, maybe you can take a stab at this. I mean, Shamora wrote us, we're streaming on Facebook, she wrote us during the conversation saying, after the protests, then what? I was around during the Rodney King beating. Before Rodney's death, I spoke with him at a church event, and he told me he was still getting harassed by the police. The reason I bring this up is, you know, there are protests, and whether it's Laquan McDonald, there's so many similarities. We see kind of a pattern of the protest movement and then how the media covers it. And, you know, there's also specific patterns where you see the cover-up, you know, cops going into the Burger King with Laquan, taking the footage. Again, that happened this time around. I just want to ask you, with Black Lives Matter and the movement and all the attention that it gets, and I'm curious, do you feel like there's a way forward that's actually attainable in terms of bringing about change to this problem? Do you think that the police and the political structures are going to be able to change?
Oh, I absolutely do. I think that if you don't feel that there is no change, there's no point in living. And that's something personally that I had to reconcile with myself. The fact that I am Black, the fact that I will be under attack, but I deserve to live. That for me is a spiritual choice. And I'm a person of faith. I am a Christian, and there's no logical explanation that I have for why I choose to go. It is a faith-driven one, and I feel that I am a part of the movement. I'm also an activist, and as far as the movement being able to push the political structures to change, I absolutely think so. In fact, police brutality would not have been an issue had it not been for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so people are at least talking about ways in which the police must change and reform. That's not something that happened when President Obama ran for office. When Obama ran in 2007, we weren't talking about police brutality. That wasn't a talking point. Now it is. And so if we could just imagine how much more of a talking point it would be moving forward, then we can start thinking about possible policies that can
Terrell,
change.
you made a point there that Damon is kind of like inching off his chair to respond to. Go ahead, Damon.
Well, no, what I was going to say is that I agree with Terrell in terms of there being a hope that, you know, that things can change and that we'll be able to get through to people, you know, who refuse to acknowledge that this is a problem or think that this is, that not that this is a problem, that this is how it's supposed to be. And I recognize that intellectually, but at the same time, like, okay, right before I got on air, I read a story about I think the Minnesota Lynx, a WNBA team, who they all wore T-shirts that had the names of the 2 Black men who were killed last week. Also had an emblem from the Dallas PD and had a Black Lives Matter written on the back of it. And they just came out after the game and just spoke about just wanting to stop the violence. They didn't really take any sides. They were very you know, they were very sober and very just, you know, really not making any waves or anything.
Right.
But the four police officers who were working that game walked off.
Wow.
Because they were so offended by their shirt, by these really tepid, you know, statements that they made. And that offended them so much that they walked off the set. And then the head of the police union, I think, either the police union or the fraternal order of the police, you know, in reach for a statement, defended them. And also, in defending them, said something really insulting and disparaging about the WNBA. And it's like, so you recognize that, yes, there are great I have family members who are police officers. You know, I recognize that there are great cops out there, great policemen, and that there are people that, you know, want to change and want things to be different. But then you see stuff like that.
Right.
And you recognize that those incidents are not isolated. They do not happen in a vacuum. Those types of mindsets exist all over the country. And it's daunting to realize that, you know what, this is what we're going up against.
Well, Damon, don't you think that the positive part of it is that at least that there's a critique about this, right? So I can't remember in recent history where there has been a strong, robust critique of policing. And so just like you, I was equally discouraged when I saw that. The bright side is that at least we're saying, hey, there's something wrong with that. Why are they leaving based on this tepid response by these ladies and this derogatory comment that this police official made about the WNBA? So at least we're calling it out, right?
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, that is a step in the right direction. And, you know, again, it's just absurd sometimes. Like even with Black Lives Matter, like the fact that people get so upset about that when it's basically just people saying, hey, it hurts. It hurts when you shoot us. I mean, stop doing it. And that's like revolutionary.
What's crazy to me is something that Trevor Noah said on The Daily Show. He's like, it is possible, it's conceivable to be pro-police and pro-Black Lives Matter. Like, you know, it's this idea that everything has to be so polarized. And, you know, I was thinking, just as you were saying, we've made progress. There's this tweet from Denley that says the country will see more of such attacks under a Trump presidency. The focus may only shift from blacks to Hispanics, though. And the reason I bring this up is I think it's also just the mindset of being so divisive and feeling as though, as you're saying, those cops, even though the guy had, you know, a cop thing on his shirt, it's like it's us or them. It's black people's lives, or it's, you know,
blue
cops.
lives.
Yeah, blue
exactly.
lives or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I forgot who said this first, but, you know, I'm sure people have heard this where, I forgot who said it, but, you know, just because you go to a breast cancer march doesn't mean you're saying forget all other cancers.
Right.
You're just focusing on this particular cancer. And it's just, again, it's absurd and to the point of ridiculous to me that people don't acknowledge and recognize that this is all this is about.
So
and I think that's part of...
Evelyn, go ahead, and then I want to raise a point because it sounds like this conversation has so much to despair, and so I want us to have a takeaway that is not completely in the negative. But go ahead, Evelyn, make your point.
Right. Well, I'm about to ruin that.
So go ahead.
And, you know, I was going to say that's part of the whole terrorism of it is apart from the actual death and bloodshed, there is the aftermath, which is us seeing these things play live, us going to the protests, of us experiencing all these things and then still being told it's in our minds, still being told this is not real, or us being villainized for feeling this way. So I think that's also part of the systematic police brutality, capital police, capital brutality. So
yeah, you're right. You did not help with the despair. But listen, okay, so I want to show you guys all two things. This is a tweet from Faisal in our community. He says, what needs to happen is there needs to be a holistic restructuring of how U.S. police officers are trained. I think that's something that a lot of people want, don't necessarily think it's going to happen. So I want to show you this. This is a video that went viral. This police officer posted it on Facebook. Nakia Jones, she's from Ohio. Have a look at the anger and just her passion.
If you are white and you working in a black community and you are racist, you need to be ashamed of yourself. You stood up there and took an oath. If this is not where you want to work at, then you need to take your behind somewhere else. I decided to work in the African American community because I'm African American.
Her fellow police officers who, you know, took an oath who swear to serve and protect and then can't do that. Some people online are saying this could be the solution, more police officers like this. I know you all want to comment on that, but I have to leave it there because that's all the time we have. Unfortunately, Damon was ready to say something. We're going to have to get his answer in his next blog post on Very Smart Brothers. Yes. I want to thank all of our guests, David Young, Sean King, Evelyn Gogi, and Terrell Starr.
Conversation continues, as always, online. Use the hashtag AJStream. See you next time.